Hello YouTube, welcome back to our introduction to programming with Python series. So in this tutorial we're going to be looking at the different data types that come with Python and different data types that are within Python basically. So in Python we have a couple of different data types. So let's take a look at them, but mainly we'll be focusing one of these, or we'll be focusing on only list in this tutorial, but we'll just take a quick general look at the other data types that we have in Python. So if we look at how to work with numbers in Python, we talk about integers and floats. We have looked at how we can work with strings. We look at string methods, string concatenation, and different stuff with strings. In today's tutorial, we're going to be looking at lists. So the lists are just elements within square brackets. Okay. So if you're coming from other programming languages, they are called arrays, right? But in Python, we call them lists in Python. So if you're coming from Java, we have something like array list or something like that. Yeah, we have also in Python, it's just called lists in Python. We also have tuples, which are just elements within parentheses, and I'll show how tuple work, which are immutable elements in Python. I also have dictionary, which are just key value pairs, which are if you're from other programming languages like Java, they're called hash maps and stuff like that. So, and also lastly, we also have sets, and sets are just a collection of unique elements. Just like in mathematics, we can have a set, and set can only consist of unique elements. We have the same data type in Python, or data structure in Python, to store a set of unique elements. So we're going to be focusing mainly on lists in this tutorial. So we're going to look at lists, and the lists are just elements within square brackets, which are just arrays from other programming languages. Okay. So let's jump into it. So lists have to store data in a list. So how to store data in a list? We look at how to retrieve data from a list, how to check the length of the list. We look at some methods that you can use on lists. Okay. So before we get into list, let's actually write the code for the last tutorial's assignment. So in the last tutorial assignment, you're going to be looking at I said you should print out the diamond shape, right? So I know that probably tipped a lot of you guys off, so you probably got it wrong, but I don't know, maybe you got it right. So let us know in the comment section below how many of you guys got that wrong, and how many of you found it challenging. Okay. So in this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and write the solution for that. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and go to my our assignments file. I'm just going to delete everything we have. So I'm just going to go ahead and write the code quickly so we can jump into working with list in Python. Okay, so I'm going to say I'm going to create an integer, and it's going to be of type 6. It's going to be called space, and it's going to have the value of 6. We're going to have int, another n is going to be of type string, and it's going to have a value of 1. And you're going to have k is going to be also be of type int, and it's going to have the value of it's going to be space minus 1, which is basically 6 minus 1, which is basically 5, right? So yeah, so we're going to say for x in range, right? So for x in range, we already talked about range and how range works. Okay, for x in range, we're going to say space minus 1. Let me just say space minus 1 comma until you're going until 13. Okay, and then you're going to keep the colon there, and then press enter. That will jump you to a new line which is indented, and then you're simply going to go ahead and simply say print, and you're going to go ahead and print space, and you're going to go ahead just print an empty space, just like this, an empty space. That's all we want to do. And then you want to multiply this by n times. Okay, by n, multiply it by n times. You're going to simply say end, and end is going to be simply an empty string. Okay, after doing that, you're going to say n plus equals to 1. Okay, just like that. We're going to increment basically the value of n. You're going to say for y in range. So for y in range, you're going to simply say for y in range k, and you're going to go down here and simply say print, and you're going to go ahead and print an asterisk and then space, and then you're going to go ahead and say the end, and the end is just going to be an empty string right there. So an empty string. So make sure that's not a space, that is an empty string. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and decrement the value of k. So k minus equals to 1, just like that. So once we have that done, and then we're going to go down here and simply print an empty space. Let's go on a new line. Okay, so that's basically the code. So I'm just going to go in here, clear the terminal, and once I'm in here, I'm going to go into my assignment. So I'm going to Python 3, Python 3, and then assignments folder, and then simply run that file. So we get that shape printed right there. So how do we go ahead and print actually the array shape for the pyramid? So to print this array shape for the pyramid, we have to do a couple of things more. So this is just the bottom part. Now we need to write another kind of for loop to print the upper section of the pyramid, right? So I actually made a mistake right here. We need to print the upper section of the pyramid. So let me just go and look at my code to see where I probably messed up. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and say we have this defined here. So we're going to go for y in range space minus 1, and then I'm going until 13. You're going to print space times n number of times, and then you're going to end the line, and then you're going to say n plus equals to 1. And then for y in range of k, right, and k is a space minus 1, what you're going to go ahead and do is just print an empty asterisk, an asterisk, and then a space, and then end line, and then you're going to minus from the value of k, and that's just printing out the bottom section of our pyramid. So what about the top section of our pyramid? So to print out the top section of our pyramid, you have to write the code for it here, right here. So let's write the code for the top section of the pyramid. So you're going to say space, and it's going to be of type int, and you're going to say is equals to the following. So right, I'm going to say space is going to be equals to an integer, and its value is going to be 6. So we're going to say for x, let me just get the spelling right there. So I'm going to say for x in range, right? So for x in range, you're going to say a range of 7, basically. You can use any number you want, but I'm just going to be using 7. I'm going to say print. Print, I'm going to go ahead and print space, and space is going to be how many times? It's going to be space times, right? So we multiply that by space. You're going to say end, and end is just going to be an empty string right there. So good. Okay, so once I have this, let me just delete that, and that's it. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and do space minus equals to 1, and then from there, I'm going to have an inner for loop, which is going to be y in range. So y in range, and you're going to which range? You're going to say x. And what's the value of x? We didn't define. Okay, x is the value of this one right here, right? So we're going to take the x from this upper section, and then you're going to go ahead and simply say the following. Okay, you're going to go ahead and simply say print, and we're going to say print. We're going to print a star, just like this, and then a space, and then I'm going to go ahead and say end, and end is just going to be an empty string right there. Okay, good. So once we have that, I also want to go ahead and change. Let me change this to be asterisk. You can use star if you want, but I'm just going to use this to be asterisk. So I'm going to go back terminal, print that terminal. Okay, we have an error right here. This is not the code that I want. So let's look at it properly to make sure I haven't really made any error. So it's saying this might multiply by space, and space is by default 6, right? So we define here 6. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cut this round number and this code definition and move it down right here. Yeah, so once I have the code like that, so when you print a space n times, right, and then space minus 1, right, and then from there I'm going to say y in range of this, and then from there I want to go ahead and print an empty line. See, that's what I skipped. So an empty to print, go to a new line basically. So let's run the code again, and let's see what we get. And there we go, we have the pyramid being printed. So sorry for that error, I just forgot that I need to print a new line after each iteration of the inner and the outer for loop, right? Yeah, so that's basically how you can print a pyramid. Let me know how you guys found it. The other easier ways of printing pyramid, if you do research online, you get better ways of printing pyramid. This is just the way I will do it, and there are better ways obviously than I will do it, but yeah, this is just my way of doing it. Okay, so that's all for this. So now let's go back and see what we are going to do. So we're going to be covering list in this tutorial. So the assignment part, the list part. So let's take a look at how we can work with list in Python. So a list in Python come in different ways. There are different ways you can work with list in Python, right? So we're going to look at all the different ways and approaches you can work with list. So the first thing you're going to go ahead and do, you can actually create a new file here, and you're going to call this file part 16, right? So I'm going to go back into my basics and create a new file. I'm going to call it part underscore 16.py. 16, let me get that right, 16.py. Okay, just like that. So I create that part 16.py, and in part 16.py, that's we're going to be writing our Python code. So I'm just going to say lists in Python, just like that. So once I have this in there, so lists are data structures used to store data in Python. So lists in other programming languages are called arrays, as I mentioned earlier on. So lists can have many number of elements that you want. So lists can have an infinite number of elements. Maybe there's a limit, but I don't know the limit in Python. All I know, you can keep as much elements in a list as much as you want. That's what I know. So lists can have many number of elements that can be of different data types. So you can have a list within a list, you can have a strings within a list, combined with numbers, combined with floats, combined with anything. In other programming languages, if you create a list maybe for integers, you can only store integers in that array, right? So yeah, there are also lists also called arrays in other programming languages, but in Python they're called lists, and you can store any data type inside of a list. Not it doesn't have a restriction like other programming languages. Okay, so this is for guys who are coming from other programming languages. Just know that you can store any data type within Python list. Okay, elements. Yeah, so but as I said, Python can store different elements instead of a string, and the elements can be of different data types. So let me just show you how to create a list in Python. So I'm going to create a list. I'm going to say now my underscore list num list is going to be equals to, and then you can just go ahead and simply say the square brackets, right? The opening and close, so opening and closing square brackets, and then in here you can go ahead and simply type in your element. So I'm just going to create a list of numbers. Okay, so I just have a list of numbers inside of an array. So how do you go ahead and access it? So this is how you create an array in Python. So if you go ahead and simply say print, let me just print this out. So print num of list, and then if I print it out, this should just show me the number of so I'm going to change my directory into basics, and then in there I'm going to go Python, and then part I'm going to use part 16, right? So run that, so you can see this. That's the list that we have, right? So it just prints out the list, and that's how lists are in Python whenever you print them out. Okay, so you can see in this list right now we have the same only the same data types inside of this list. So this is how you can create a list in Python. Okay, so that's basically how you can create a list in Python. But if you come from in the modern Python, you also have type hints, so you can also specify type hints if you want. Again, type hints are not compulsory, but it's also is very good practice to start using type hints, because in modern Python libraries are using type hints. So learning type hint to just set you apart from the rest of Python programmers. So I'm going to go ahead and include type hints in here. So to create a type hint, just say you're just going to say from typing. I'm going to go ahead and import list just like that, and you're going to say this is going to be of type list. So if you don't know what all this from typing, just ignore this for now. We'll cover this in the upcoming videos. Okay, so just go ahead and say from typing import list, and it's not compulsory. Okay, you can do it the previous way that I did before doing this import. It's also work. Okay, so if I run the code again, we'll get back the same output. So these are just type hints in Python. So I'm just telling Python that this is going to be a list type. So you can see even here a variable is going to be of type list containing integers, right? Because we have only integers in here. Okay, so good. That's how you can create a list in Python and type hint that list. Okay, good. Now let's look at how you can access elements in Python. So in a Python list, so to access elements in Python, we can do this in a couple of ways. So let's talk about the difference between an index and the list, and sorry, an element. So let's talk about an index. So what's an index in in Python or in programming in general? So in programming in general, we know that computers start counting from zeros, right? Python is a zero based indexing language, meaning that it starts counting from zero. So in Python, indexes start from zero. In other languages, maybe like I don't know, I think I don't know in language where it starts with a one, but there are some languages that start with a one. But in Python and most other programming languages, like the popular programming languages, Java, C, all of them, they start as zero-based index programming languages. That's like Python. So we start counting from 0, and then you go to 1, and then 2. So sorry for that. Let me just go here, 1, 2, 3, and then so on like that. So these are just arrays, how indexing works in programming, right? Also in Python. Okay. So there's also another way you can do you can talk also elements. You also have something called elements in programming. So elements are just the different elements. So this is an element of this list, is an element of this list, and elements, you start counting elements from 1, and then 2, and then 3. Okay, so element 1 will be 3. Index 0 is this one here, 3. So that's the difference between an index and an element. So to access elements of a list, we can use the indexes. So let's say that I want to access the first element, which is just 3, right? So I'm going to use index 0, because index 0 is going to return to me 3. So that's how I'm going to go here. So how do I specify the index? And I just say square brackets after the name of the list, and then or the variable of the list, and then finally passing the index that I want to access. So 0 is going to return to me 3. So let's go in the terminal and run the code. You can see I get back 3. So what if I want to get back 8? So it'd be 0, right? 0, and this will be 1, this will be 2, and this will be 3. So we're going to go ahead and simply pass in here 3 and run the code again. Now you can get back 8. So that's how indexing works basically. So that's the difference between an index and an element. Some people, they confuse this terminologies. They think index and elements are basically the same thing, but are two different things. Okay, so that's an index and an element. So let's say that let's pause the video and just go ahead and access for me in 5. Okay, access for me sorry, not 5 but 9. So how do you access element 9? Okay, so you just start from count from 0. So it's 0, and this is 1. Right, 5 is 1, and this will be 2, and this will be 3, and this will be 4. So if I go in here and specify 4, we should get back 9. So passing 4 and index 4, and 4 index 4 is going to return to me element 9, which is this element right here. Okay, so you can just also do this in an easy way. You can just count in a human way. So you can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 minus 1, you get back the index. So if you are given an element, so if I give you the 9 is at element 5, right? It's the fifth element. So what's the index? Which is minus 1, and you get the index, which is going to be 4. So that's how the difference between an element and an index is in Python. So good. Okay, now let's look at list slicing in Python. Okay, so now you have been able to select just a single element in a list. What would if you want to select a certain section of the list? So let's say I want to select from this 3 until 8. So how do I go ahead and do that? So I have to specify where I want to start from. So I want to start from 3, right? And its index is 0. So I'm going to pass in 0. And then I'm going to say colon. And then where I want to end. So it'll be 0, 1, 2, and 3. Right, so it's going to be index 3. So I'm going to go ahead and pass in 3 here. So if I pass in 3, let's run the code and let's see what we get. Okay, I get until 7. 8 is not included, right? Okay, that's a bit strange. The reason why 8 is not included is because the last index is going to be ignored. So if you say 3, it's going to take until 2. So you're going to go 1, 0, 1, 2, right? That's what you get. So if you want to go until index 3, you have to say 4, right? So because the last value is ignored, so if you pass in a 4, you can still get back that stuff. So that's how you can do elements as list slicing in Python. So that's what it's called, list slicing. Okay, so you can also start from here. Okay, let me just say I want to start from 5, which is going to be index 1. So index 1 to index 4 it's going to be that. So you can see that. So you can also change this to be 2. That's going to start from 7 and 8, right? So that's basically, if you specify 4, it's going to go down to as an empty element, right? So that's basically it. So that's how you can work with different elements. Let's say that you want to go until 6, and let's see what we get. So if I run the code, we get back just 9, right? So that's how you can that's how list slicing works in Python. So you say where you want to start from and colon, and then where you want to end, and these are just indexes, right? So if you're using the square bracket notation, make sure that you always use the index. Okay, so the index and not the element number, but the index. Okay, so that's how you can work with list slicing in Python. There are other different ways. Let me just show you a couple of them. So let's say that I didn't specify where to start from, right? So if you don't specify where to start, you don't say any value right here. You just say colon and then where to end. So what Python is going to do is going to start from the very beginning until the end, right, where you want to stop, right? So let me change this back to 5 and let's see what we have. So if I change back to 5, actually I want to change it to 4, basically we until 8, right? So if I run this, we go until 8 from the very beginning of the list. So that's how list slicing works. So if you don't specify where to start from, you can start from the very beginning until the very end. What if you didn't specify where to stop, right? So I just say I want to start from index 0, and I didn't tell Python where to stop. So what it's going to do is going to take for me from index 0 until the very end of the list. So if I go ahead and change this to index 1, it's going to start from 5 until the end of that list. So that's how we're going to work. So 5 until the end of the list. So that's how list slicing work. There are other different things that you can use. If I didn't specify, if I just go ahead and specify negative 1, I didn't say where to stop, but I said it should stop at negative 1. What do you think I get? We back from 1 until from the beginning until 8. And the reason why is that if you say 0, it starts counting. If you use a negative number, it starts counting from the back of the list. So this is 0 and this is negative 1. So it's going to go until there. Yeah, so that's basically how we can work with it. So if I just go ahead and say in here I want negative 3, what do you think it's going to get? So if I say negative 1, it's going to return to me 1, right? Negative 1 is basically this one right here, right? Index in the very last element. So that's how you can get the very last element of the list using the negative indexing. So you can also say, let's say that from this until negative 4. So from the beginning until negative 4, let's see what you get. So this will be negative 1, negative 2, negative 3 until negative 4. Okay, I think we should get until around 3, right? Because the last element is ignored. Yeah, so that's basically how we can work with list slicing in Python. Okay. So now let's look at how to add different elements to a list. So I've created a list of integers. I haven't added any elements to it. So let me just show you how you can add elements to it. So let me just delete this part of so that's how we have learned how to select elements from a list using indexing and also list slicing. Okay, so now if I just go ahead and print this code, it's just going to return to me the list right as expected. So how do I add elements into this? So to add element into a list, you have to say the name of the variable of the list and you say dot append, and you just use the append method and specify what you want to add. Let's say I want to add 10 to it. Let's say 10 is fine. Yeah, and then after adding it to it, let me just copy this part of the code and go down here and run it again. So paste it here. So we're going to print the list before adding an element to it. We're going to now add an element and then print it after adding an element. So let's see what we get. So if I run the code, now this is the list before adding an element, and this is the list after adding an element. So the append method is used in Python to add an element to a list. So let's say I want to add the string hello. So if I told you Python the data types must not be the same, right? So you can have a heterogeneous data type list. So if I run it, you can see we have hello. world in there. So that's how you can add different elements to a list in Python. You can also add another list instead of a list, and these are called we'll look at this later on. I don't want to confuse you guys, so we'll look at this later on. Let's say this, right, I add another list instead of our list. So if I run the code again, let's see what we get. So we can see we have another list inside of the list. So we can have this is a heterogeneous data type list in Python. So yeah, that's how you can add different elements to a list and stuff like that. Okay. Okay, so let's now look at how to remove elements from a list. Or I've learned how to add an element to a list using the append method. Now let me just show you how to remove an element from the list. So I'm just going to delete this section of the code, and I'm just going to say dot pop. Right, the pop is another method we can use for a list. So pop, what it simply does, it removes and returns an index, an item at a given index. But if you didn't specify any index, it's going to return the last one. So by default is last, right, the last index. So if I run the code again, we now see that it has removed the last index. This is before it removed the last index. Now this is after removing the index. Now you can see the last element was 9, but you can see now after removing 9 doesn't exist in our list anymore. Yeah, that's basically how we can work with it. So good, we can you can specify the index that you want to remove. Let's say I want to remove an element at index 3. You can see now at element at index 3 was 8, so it has removed 8 from our list. So that's basically it. It removes and returns it, so you can actually store this whatever it removes from in another variable. Let's say that I want to store it in a variable. Let me just say popped let me say pop number. Okay, pop num, and pop now is going to be of type integer because we expect an integer back. And I can just go ahead and print out that pop num right here. So once I have that, I go ahead and run the code. Now you can see remove 9 and we print the list after removing 9. So that's basically it, how it works. Okay, so that's how we can work with lists, how we can remove elements from the list, how you can add elements into a list, right? So good. Now let's look at how you can check the size of a list. Okay, so this list has how many elements? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 elements. So if I check the size, what should it be? So if I go ahead, let me just delete all of this. I'm just going to go in here and just say the length of, and then pass in the name of that list. So you say length and then parentheses, right? It's a function. Okay, we'll look at functions just in a few in upcoming videos. So you say length and then parentheses, and then you pass in the length of the elements of the list that you want to check. So in this case, you want to check the length of the num list, and you're just going to go ahead and print out that result, and you're just printing it out. So if I check the number or the length of the list, that should return to me 5 because there are 5 individual elements inside of that list. So that's how you can check the size of a list within Python. Okay, so how do you loop through? We have learned about loops, right? How do you loop through a list in Python? So let me just delete this and let's learn how to loop through a loop in Python. So you can say for x in, and then passing the name of the list, we're going to go ahead and print x. So what it's going to do for each element of this list is going to store it in x and then print out. And it's going to do this until we reach the end of the list. So if you run the code again, and you can see we can get back all of that. So we have already gone ahead and look at for loop. So I hope this makes clear sense to you. So we're just going to say for x in number of lists, print out that x. That's basically, so it's going to print out each element of that number of lists in the order, right, from the very beginning, from index 0 until the very last index of the list. Okay, so in C++ we start from for int I, and then y I is blah 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 until I plus plus and something like that, right? This from Java or C++. In Python it's much easier, and this is how we do how to iterate through, or how to run a loop in Python, loop through a list in Python. So this is called looping through a list or iterating over a list. Okay, so once we have gone over that, now I want to go ahead and show you one way we can also do this is using, let me just comment this out for now because I want us to compare the code. So this one, only you can do this. Another cool way we can do this in Python, we have something called list comprehension in Python. So list comprehension in Python is just basically the same thing, kind of like looping through a list, but in a more fashionable way. Okay, so I'm just going to put in something here, and I'm going to say print x, right? I'm going to say for x in num list, just like that. So that's what we are called list iteration. It's a bit of strange syntax from the for the for loop. I hope you guys are now comfortable with the for loops because we went over for loops, nested for loops, and all that. So you guys are now comfortable working with for loops. But this is another way you can also iterate through a list in Python using this method called list comprehension. Okay, I'm not going to go ahead into talking in depth about list comprehension because list comprehension is quite new in Python. It's has been around for a while, but it's still new in Python. So yeah, that's how list comprehension works. So let's say that you want to actually square each of these values. So I'm just going to print this squared. Okay, so if I run that, it's going to return to me a square of this, all of this. So 3 squared is 9, 5 squared is 25, 7 squared is 49, 8 squared is for 64, and then 9 squared is 81. So that's basically how we can use this comprehension. So you can just take the same code here and just put it in just one line of Python code. So that's really just amazing. Okay, so these are what some of the modern Python syntax that we have. Okay. Okay, so there are different methods that you can use in Python. So let's actually look at some of these methods, functions that come with that you can use in Python. So let me just delete all this, and in here, I'm just going to go ahead and just use some of the sum methods. So I'm going to say I'm going to say sum, and it's going to be of type. Let me just say total, and it's going to be of type integer, and it's going to be the sum of num list, just like that. So it's going to this num sum is an inbuilt function in Python, and you provide in an iterable, and a list is an example of an iterable, right? It's iterable, so it's a list. Example of an iterable in Python is a list. So we're just passing in an iterable, and it's going to return to us the sum of all the elements of that iterable. So I can just go ahead and print total, just like that. So if I run the code now, we get 32, right? So it just returns to us the sum of all these elements. So this plus this is 8, 8 plus 7 is 15, 15 plus 8 is 20, 23. Yeah, if 23 plus 9 is 32. Yeah, so that's we get that. Okay, if my math is, let me just check. Yeah, it's 32. So okay, so I'm correct. Okay, good. So that's how we can use the sum to find the sum of a list. This is an inbuilt Python function. We'll look at functions later on. Okay, so don't worry about functions in Python and all of that. Okay, so once we have that done, we can let me just show you how can you achieve the same the same process of finding the sum using a for loop. So I'll just use a for loop, and I hope you have covered for loop. So I hope you guys are now comfortable using for loops in Python. Okay, and how you can iterate over a list or loop through a list. So we're just going to say for, and then each of these you're going to say sum. Let me just say total plus equals to x, and then finally you're going to print down here. You're going to print total, just like that. So I'm going to have a variable right here, up here. It's going to be sum, and sum is going to be by default 0. Sum is going to be of type integer. So sum, that's basically, so sum is of type int and is by default 0. So each time we loop through a loop, we go through and loop, right? So the first iteration, the first loop, you're going to go x is going to be 3, right? So we're going to take so this is going to be total. So let me change this to be total, right? So we're going to take 0 and 0 plus 3, and then we're going to store it in total, right? And then the second iteration, you're going to take 5, and now total is 3. 3 plus 5 is going to be 8, and you're going to do that until the very end. So if I run the code, we should get back 32, and that's how you can we wrote this ourselves, right? So this is basically what this function basically does. Okay, and you can also let's just a challenge, just pause the video and try to do this using a list comprehension in Python. Okay, good. Okay, so we have looked at the sum function and how we can implement it ourselves. So let's look at how to filter a list. Okay, using a for loop, just to exercise our knowledge of loops and combine with what you have just learned in Python. So to do this, I'm going to go here and create a list of fruits. So let me just I can delete all of this right here. I'm going to create fruits, and it's going to be of type list. Again, it's not must specify the type in, but I want to specify the type in. Okay. Okay, so I want you guys to adapt good programming practices. Okay, so I have mango, and then I have orange, and then I have let's say lemon, just like that. So I have a couple of fruits in here. So I'm going to go ahead and loop through this. I'm going to say for fruits in fruits, right? For fruit in fruits, and fruits is our list. So we're going to look through it and get each fruit. I'm going to check if the fruit is okay. You can just go ahead and actually print it out. Let's just print it out for now. I hope by now you know what to expect. So let's going to print out fruit. So if we run the code, we just get all the fruits that we have, right? So let's go ahead and actually, I want to filter this list. So I want to check if the fruit is equals to an let's say a mango. What I want to do, I want to go ahead and print out the fruit. So we're going to look through the list. So the first iteration, the fruit variable will be apple, and it's apple equals to this is going to be false. So we won't go inside of this block. We'll go to the next iteration, and the next iteration we're going to check fruit now will be mango, right? So we check mango is equals to mango. Yes, it's true. So we're going to go in here and just print out the fruit, and that's basically it. And one thing we didn't actually learn about loops is that the break and the continuous statement. So the break statement just simply once we found it, there's no point of continuing iteration over apple and lemon because we know that it is not mango, because all we're looking for is a mango, right? So we can just use the break statement, which just simply say jump out of the loop, stop going through other iterations, and that's what the break statement does. Okay, and there's also break and there's also continue. We'll look at that in the future. Okay, so if you run, you can see you get mango, and once you get mango, we just stop because there's no point of iterating through the list when you have find what we already wanted, right? So yeah, that's basically how you can iterate and through a list and find something that you're interested in. Okay, so that's how you can filter through a list and find something. Okay, let me just change this again, so I got the spelling wrong. So if I run it again, yeah, it doesn't exist, right? Because none of the things matches manch, right? So oh yeah, so that's basically it. So once we have that done, let's see how we can go ahead and return the index of the first fruit. Let's see how we can return the index of the first fruit. Okay, so let's say that we are looking for mango, and once we find mango, we want to return the index of mango. So index of mango is going to be 0 and 1, right? So the index of mango should be 1. So how do we go ahead and return the index of mango? So we can create a variable I, and it's going to be of type int, and by default it's going to be let's say it's 0. Okay, so once we get once we go through the list and we didn't find it, you're going to simply go ahead and do I plus equals to 1, because in Python you can do plus plus. I was about to do plus plus. Okay, if you're coming from other programming language, you probably understand this. Okay, but if you're new to programming, don't worry, it's just a joke that other programming like old programmers can understand. So yeah, that's done. So basically is what you're simply doing, you're looping through this list, and if the fruit is equals to mango, we're just going to go ahead and let's print out the fruit, and also we're going to go ahead and print out I. So if it's not it, then we're going to go ahead and go ahead and simply add I equals to 1. So the first iteration, I is going to be 0, and you're going to check is apple equals to fruit, false. So we'll go ahead and I add 1 to I. So in the second iteration, fruit will be mango and I will be 1, right? So we're going to check if fruit equals to mango. Basically it's mango equals to mango, and that's true. So we're going to go ahead and print the mango and then print out I, which is 1 at this point, and then finally break because we already found what you're looking for. So once I have that, you can see you get the index and also the name of the fruit. And another cool way of doing this in Python, Python is a really advanced kind of very advanced language, so it has a lot of inbuilt functions that you can use, and that's one of the advantages of Python. So let's make a use of these inbuilt functions in Python. So we can say for I comma fruit in fruits in in enumerate, and you pass in fruits right here. Fruits, okay, fruits is a list, right? So we're looking for this list right here. That's what you're passing in here. Okay, so what you're simply doing is that you're going to iterate through our fruits list, and it's going to return to us we are passing it through the function enumerate. What it simply does, it returns to us a tuple of the index and the element. So on the first iteration, it's going to return to us a tuple, which is going to be 1 comma, and then the fruit is going to be the elements from the list, which is going to be apple in this case. The second iteration is going to return to us the index. The index here will be 0, and then the index here will be 1, and to be mango, and then the third iteration is going to return to us index 2, right? So index 2, and it's going to return to us index 2 is going to return to us orange, just like that. So yeah, that's basically how it's going to work. Okay, so once we have this, I'm going to go ahead and simply print. I'm going to print out I, and I'm going to say comma, and then also the fruit, just like that. So that's basically it. So that's what enumerate does. It returns to us something of this, actually something exactly like this in each iteration. So the first iteration is going to return to us a tuple. So the I is going to store 0, and then finally the fruit is going to store this apple information, and you're going to go ahead and print out apple and fruit. And the second one is going to go ahead and return to us index, which is going to be 1, and then finally the element from the list which corresponds to index 1, which is mango and stuff like that. So let's run the code again, and you can see we get back the mango. So you can actually write a if statement to check if fruit is equals to mango, and then return the I and the fruits respectively. Okay, just filter through. Yeah, so if you want to see actually what it does, just go ahead and simply say X here, and then down here you're just going to go ahead and print out X. So let me just run the code again, and let's see what we get. So we get back exactly tuple what I was telling you. So we get it back. So that's basically how you can iterate through something without keeping track of an index. So in another programming language like Java, C++, you have to keep track of these indexes, right? So in Python you can do without keeping track of these indexes. Okay, good. So that's basically how we can iterate through a loop in Python. So let's go ahead and look at a couple of things. So I'm going to create another list. I'm going to call it num underscore list. It's going to be of type list, and it's going to have the following number. So three. If I remember, it was three, it was five, it was six, it was seven, it was eight, and it was nine. I think six wasn't there, but yeah, let's just keep six for now. Okay, I think it was there, but it doesn't really matter. So I want to look at methods inside of string. So let's look at sorry, list methods. That's what I want to us to look at the different list methods inside of that you can use on lists. Okay, so num list dot, and you can say dot reverse. What reverse what reverse simply does is that it reverses a list. Basically, what it does, so it's like 9 will be the first element and 3 will be the last element, and all of the whole list will be reversed upside down. So let's say num list, and let's print num list after reversing it. Now you can see the list is now reversed. So 9 becomes the first element, and then 8, and then 7. It goes like that. So basically, it just takes the list and then reverse it. So you can actually print out the original list, original list before reversing it, so, and the list after reversing it. So you can see this is the list before reversing it right here, and this is the list after reversing it. So that's basically it, how it works. Okay, now let's look at you can also, we have looked also the append method already. So also let's look at the count method. So let's say that I want to count how many times uh 3 exists inside of this list. So let's add a couple of more threes in here. So let's add some more numbers in here. I just gonna add more threes. So I have how many? I have 3 appears 3 times, right? So I deleted 9, I think. So 9 right here. So 3 appears 1, 2, and 3 times. So let's say let's get the count of 3. So you can say count and then pass in what you want to count. So it's going to return to the count of that what you are trying to count. So let's say we want to return the count of 3. So let me just delete this. It's going to return to us a value. So I just want to go ahead and print out that value. So let me just close parenthesis, just like that. So that's basically it. So it's going to return to us how many times the value 3 or the element 3 occurs inside of this list, and it's going to return to us the count of it. So I'm just going to go ahead and run the code again. Let the terminal run the code. It says 3 occurs 3 times. So if I go ahead and delete this and run the code again, now 3 occurs 2 times because I just deleted it. And if I go ahead and check 6 occurs only 1 time, so that should be 1, right? So good. That's how you can use the count method. So you also have the insert method. So you can say insert. So let me just delete this, and I'm going to simply say numlist.insert. Right, so we want to pass in, let's hover on this insert. If you hover on this insert, it's going to give you the quick documentation. So you have to pass in the index and then the object that you want to insert. So let's say that you want to insert let's say you want to insert 4 at index 1. So you're going to pass in index 1 and you want to insert 4 in there. So let's say print num list. Let's see, run the code again. Now you can see 4 has been inserted in index 1 because it's index 0 and this is index 1. So that's how you can insert stuff. You can use the insert method. So you can also use the remove method in Python. So you can say remove and just say remove, just like that. We have already looked at pop, how to remove the last elements or the index that you specify. Let's say that you want to remove, now pop is for specifying using indexing, right? So let's say that you want to remove a number that you don't know the index of, so that you don't want to go ahead and count. So let's say you want to remove 70. Let's say you want to remove actually 8. So instead of counting which index is 8, you can just go ahead and specify you want to remove 8 as an element. So if you run the code again, it's going to remove 8. Okay, so it is 8 as an element and not an index. So that's the difference between pop and remove. So pop, you have to specify the index that you want to pop, and remove, you have to specify the elements that you want to remove. And I explained to you the difference between an element and an index, right? So good. So once we have that done, I can also use pop. I've already showed how to use pop. We can also check, you can also have a couple of functions that you can use with a list. So you can say, let's say I want to check out the max of the num list. So max is going to return to me the biggest element. In this case, it's going to be 70, right? It's going to return to me, so I just want to go ahead and print it out. You can store it in a variable, but I just want to go ahead and print out straight. So once I have that, I'm just going to go into my terminal and then run the code. You can see the max element is 70. You can also check the mean just by passing the mean and then run the code again. The mean is 3. The mean, the smallest element, and you can see is 3 actually. Okay, good. So we have checked that, and let's also look at string list concatenation in Python. So I'm going to go ahead and create another. Let me just actually go in here and just say num list. I'm going to say num list equals to, or you can say num list plus equals to, and then pass in another list. So if you want to add another list to num list, let's say this list right here, and let's print num list after adding it to it. So if I run the code, let me just go back in here and okay, I just want to print num list. So num list and then run the code. So you can see now I've added those elements to it. So that's how you can add elements to a list in Python. Or you can also do it the old way if you don't want to use augmented assignment operators. You can say list plus and then that. So if you run the same, you get the same result. So a short form of that is just by using the augmented assignment operator, which is this one. And you have explained the augmented assignment operator in other videos. So you can also go ahead and multiply a list. So you can just go ahead and say list. Let me just delete this part right here, and I can say list times 3. So let's say list times 3, and let's see what we get. So if I go back in the terminal, run the code, it just takes the list and the list basically and repeats it 3 times. So you can see this, the first one ends here, and then the second one starts from here and ends here, and then the third one starts from here and ends here. So just takes the list and basically multiplies by 3. So just copies this element and paste it 3 different times. So that's basically what multiplying a list does in Python. It doesn't actually multiply the individual elements, actually it multiplies the whole list, basically copy and paste the whole list 3 different times. So that's what list multiplication does in Python. Okay, so once we have that, we can also copy a list. So let's say I want to go ahead and copy a list. So I want to go ahead and here and say copied underscore list is going to be of type list, right? Because you have another list. So if you copy a list, you're going to have a list, right? So we're going to go ahead and copy the num list and then dot copy, just like that. Copy just like that. And if I run the code, let's see what we get. So I'm going to go in the terminal, clear the terminal, and then run the code. Actually, I want to print out the copied list. So I want to copy just paste both of them and then simply also print out the copied list. So I have the original list at first and then the copied list. So you can see the original list and then the copied list. So that's how you can copy a list in Python. So there are different ways of copying a list in Python. Another easy way you can do copy a list in Python, you can just also instead of using the method, you can also do this. So you can say num list and then simply do this and then do this. So what this simply does is that we didn't specify where to start. We are talking about list indexing. So go back to the list indexing part. We didn't specify where to start. We didn't specify where to stop. So it's going to basically start from the very beginning and return to the very end, and that's what this simply does. So it's going to copy all the lists basically. So if I run the code again, we should get back the same output. So those are 2 different ways you can copy a list in Python. So you can also go ahead and actually sort a list. So let me just go in here. I'm just going to delete this and also delete this here. I can go say num list dot sort and just like that. So what sort simply does, it just simply sorts the list. So let's run the code and let's see what we get. So you can see it sorts the list in an order, in ascending order. So that's basically what sorting basically does. So that's sorting. Okay, so if you want to sort, and you can say dot reverse reverse. I don't know if that's possible. You can after sorting the list, it's gonna be in ascending order, and then you can simply reverse it. Or I think there are ways you can pass in methods here. You can pass in reverse equals to, and then you can say reverse reversed equals to true. So that's true. A boolean, we covered boolean, so that's true. And basically it's going to sort the list in a descending order, right? So you can see the first time you sort it in ascending order, and now sort it in descending order. So that's basically how sort works in Python. Okay, so we can also clear an element of the list. How do you clear an element, or how do you clear a list? So you can say num list, and you can say dot, and then this is going to be just an empty list. So I'm just saying all the elements are just empty list. So with once I run the code, we should get back an empty list. So that's how you can clear or delete elements of a list. That's one way. Another way you can do the same thing is simply say dot clear. So dot clear is a method, and you call that method, and once you have it, it's also going to go ahead and clear the list. So there are two different ways you can clear a list in Python. So how do you delete a list in Python? You just go ahead and say del and then number of lists right here. So it's going to delete the number of lists, and you're going to get an error in this case because we are trying to print num list, which is no more there because you have deleted it, right? So that's why you're getting that error. So that's basically all about lists that you need to know. So in the next tutorial, we'll look at how 2-dimensional lists work. For now, this is basically what all about lists you need to know. There are just a lot of complex stuff you can do with lists, and if you go into machine learning, lists are very, very important. So it's good that you understand how lists work at a fundamental level, but no worry, don't pressure yourself. This knowledge is just going to be enough for you. We'll learn more as you go along. So that's all for me for this video today about lists. So let's look at what assignment I have for you. So we have looked at how to find the maximum elements of a list, right? So now I want you to actually write the code to find the maximum element of a list, or the maximum and the minimum if you want. Any of those or both of them is fine, just for practice. We have to write the code yourself because we're using this Python inbuilt method in this video. Now I want you to write the code. We have to use a for loop, iterate through, and then find what's the biggest element of the list, right? So Yeah, let me just give you a hint for ahead. You can just use a loop, and then you can iterate through a loop and find out what's the biggest element of the list. So just assignment, and the next video we're going to write the solution to this assignment, and next video we're going to also looking at 2D arrays in Python, right? So 2D arrays in Python, 2D lists. Okay, so that's basically for this video. Again, if you enjoyed this video, kindly consider liking the video, sharing this content with anyone who you think might find it helpful, and also subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the notification bell, and let me know of any feedback that you guys have. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. Keep safe.